Hi, welcome to Hollywood Crime Scene. This is Rachel Fisher.
This is Desi, Jedeikin. Hi.
I'm excited to hear what we're discussing this week.
Well, I thought it was time to get back into a little murder since we haven't done a case like that in a while.
Yeah.
Well, with the break and the long Marlon Brando.
Somebody complained.
Oh, right. This isn't for them. I'm not doing that because of that complaint.
This is for us and
just
the
so
other
you
listeners.
know, complainer. So turn it off.
You can't listen to this episode.
You can't listen. So today I'm going to also gift you with a long requested subject, and that is the Menendez brothers.
What? We're doing it?
We're doing it. So this murder actually occurred on August 20th in 1989. So it's the 35th anniversary, basically, of the crime this week.
Oh, my God.
So obviously this case has a ton of reasons it became a huge story. And one thing I would like to point out up top is that this case is responsible for the success of Court TV.
Is that so?
Yes. Court TV was launched in 1991. It was set to focus on true crime documentaries, legal analysis, and live news coverage of prominent criminal cases. And the channel covered the first trial live in 1993, and it was a massive success, which really established the channel as legit and paved the way for the massive coverage of the OJ trial just a short time later. It also started a national discourse on the abuse excuse, which we will get into at some point in great detail. Not this episode, because this will be a multi-parter. I thought 2, but now I'm thinking 3.
It's a lot, Desi.
It is a lot.
Wait, they call it the abuse excuse?
Yes.
That seems crass.
There's a lot about this case, just based on what I've read so far, that is very crass.
Okay.
And even like things I've like watched and listened to where people talk about this case like from back in the day.
Right.
And it's like very, whatever you think about these brothers, the way it's talked about is kind of like, ugh.
Right.
Because, you know, you can think that they're lying, but it's like there still should be a sensitive way of talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it kind of, there's a lot of gross ways people spoke about the idea of sexual abuse leading to violence like this.
Right.
That's definitely, I hope, a little antiquated now.
Yeah.
So a lot of sources here, including the main book, which is considered the definitive book on the case. It's called The Menendez Murders by Robert Rand. This was the source for the Law and Order true crime miniseries on the case, starring Edie Falco as Leslie Abramson. I watched a lot of documentaries, including The Menendez Murders, Eric Tells All, which is the first time he has told his story in great detail, apparently. And I read a lot of Dominic Don's reporting on the case. And of course, went down a lot of Reddit rabbit holes just to make sure I got all the weird thoughts on this case as well. People are still, this is a case that's still highly discussed in true crime forums. And things change all the time as new information comes out. But as I said, there's a lot to get to. So let's start. On August 20th, 1989, a panicked 911 call was made by 21-year-old Lyle Menendez, informing the dispatcher that somebody had killed his parents. Police arrived to find the bodies of Jose and Kitty Menendez shot 16 times between them. Their sons, Lyle and Eric, said that they were at a movie theater watching Batman and came across the horrific scene when they arrived home that night. The initial theory presented by the brothers was that this could be related to Jose's work in the entertainment industry, perhaps a mob-style hit. Police began their investigation, which began with the question, why would anyone want to kill Jose Menendez, a successful entertainment executive, and his wife of 24 years? So Jose Menendez was, by all accounts, an American success story. He was born in Cuba. His father was a one-time soccer star, and his mom was a champion swimmer. He lived a relatively idyllic life until Castro took over after the Cuban Revolution. So at the age of 15, his parents sent him to the United States to live with family in rural Pennsylvania while they stayed behind in Cuba. Initially, Jose was very depressed in his new home, and he was made fun of at school, and people called him Ricky Ricardo. His swimming talent eventually made him extremely popular and kind of reignited his old arrogance. He spoke often about how successful he would be one day, claiming that everyone would one day know his name. It's always scary when you have a quote like that from someone who becomes famously murdered or becomes a famous murderer. So Jose eventually earns a swimming scholarship to Southern Illinois University, and it's here that he meets Mary Louise Anderson, nicknamed Kitty. They are immediately drawn to each other, and some describe Kitty as being one of the only people who could challenge Jose, mostly because she matched his arrogance and confidence. Kitty was born and raised in Illinois, and although she was a daddy's little girl, her dad was controlling and abusive to his wife and her older brothers. When the dad eventually divorces the mom, her brothers are happy their nightmare is over, and Kitty basically cries in bed every night. She blamed her mom for angering the dad when the mom would stand up to him or defend her children. And some people theorize that she learned from a young age that if you go against your husband, it leads to divorce and ruin. As a teen, Kitty was pretty and popular and had dreams of working in broadcasting. That is until she met her beloved Hosey. That's what she called him. They were married just months after meeting and immediately moved to New York, where Hosey continued his education at Queens College. Kitty left broadcasting because Jose thought broadcasting was for men, not for women. She began teaching to help support them. And they were very poor during this period. But Eric would later say that she often described this time as the happiest in her life, saying that the money brought them apart because they no longer needed to be as close. After graduating with honors, Jose got a job at a prestigious accounting firm and almost immediately made an impact. He rose very quickly in the ranks and began earning big bucks. With success, the Menendezes began a family. The couple's first son, Joseph Lyle, who would go by his middle name, was born in January of 1968, and then a few years later, Eric was born in November of 1970. In 1972, Jose moves over to Hertz Rental Car Company, where he begins the process of streamlining spending and finding ways to save money. He's like the corporate exec who cuts all the things.
Like all the amenities?
Yeah, cuts all the amenities and tries to save a buck no matter what, no matter who it hurts or how miserable it makes the employees. That's him.
So he got rid of the free peanuts on the airplane.
He got rid of the free peanuts. He stopped stocking the fridge in the break room.
Okay.
He's that guy. He just cuts everything. And he's very successful and quickly in charge of all U.S. operations. He's really driven to succeed and often described as cutthroat by many who worked for him. He's one of the guys who the bosses love and the peers and people who work under him hate him.
Yeah.
So many people in the book talked about Jose's management style or his business style. One guy who worked with him at Hertz named Kevin McDonald said, when you walked into a meeting that he was running, there were no holds barred. You could go into a meeting and he'd keep you there all day, just going on and on and on until you agreed with him and took his demands, accepted his demands. You'd walk out of there and you'd just say to yourself, I never want to do that again. He also said that one of his favorite things to do was mock the people who worked for him. And he would often say to them, well, then you really haven't done your job. So what are we paying for you for? He always made people feel very small and he considered himself superior to others. The Menendez family eventually purchased $1 million home in Princeton, New Jersey after visiting Jose's sister, Terry, and falling in love with the area. Eventually, Jose's other sister, Marta, moves to Princeton as well, and the three families spend a lot of time together. Marta described her early impressions of Lyle and Eric. Quote, as young boys, Eric and Lyle were two earthquakes. Our kids were very disciplined, but when Jose's kids arrived, the house trembled and things broke. She goes on to describe that Jose really didn't believe in disciplining his sons, and when people would bring up their lack of manners, he was like, it's not really my job to teach them how to behave. When they're old enough, they'll figure it out.
Wow.
I don't think that really worked. And there are several other disturbing things that Jose's sister's families started noticing about the Menendez family. For one, Kitty seemed already to to sort of have a little bit of a drinking problem, and this will get much worse throughout her life. She also seemed to have little interest in caring for her boys. Like, motherhood did not suit her. This is according, by the way, to this Jose's family.
Right.
Not saying they're lying. I'm just saying that's where this source is coming from. So according to them, Marta's husband, Peter, recalled an incident where Jose told Lyle to stop running in the house. When Lyle didn't listen, Jose picked him up, shaking and screaming at him, causing 5-year-old Lyle to pee his pants. When Peter, the brother-in-law, confronted Jose and was like, hey, like, that's not how you treat a child.
Right.
Jose basically kicked them all out of the house. They were over for like dinner or something. So they all got kicked out of the house. Once at a mall, Kitty and Marta were shopping with the boys, who almost immediately just ran off in the mall. And Marta was kind of concerned, like, should we find them? And Kitty's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, she had been through this before. And then shortly after that, an announcement went out over the PA saying the boys were in security. And Kitty just said, well, now we know they're safe, so we can keep shopping.
What?
She picked the boys up 45 minutes later after she kind of used it as free babysitting.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy.
Yeah.
And also the boys are just sitting there with like security. It's probably scary. Just a weird choice. According to Marta, Jose wasn't the only abusive a parent. They claim that Kitty also hit and yelled at the boys, calling them stupid and idiots over pretty minor, typical kid things. Jose even allegedly went full Fatal Attraction and killed Lyle's bunny at some point. Just because he said, you need to get rid of that bunny. And when Lyle didn't, he took care of it, according to him. Yes. Jose would also encourage the boys to physically fight each other to hash things out. Like, Lyle would kind of bully his younger brother, Eric, and he would tell Eric to go like kick his brother's ass. And they would get into these huge physical brawls. And that was sort of Jose found that acceptable way to deal with things. He also permitted them to be very disrespectful to their mother. In his opinion, it was his job to raise them to know that they would one day be the man of the house. And that's like the man of the house's job, is to put the woman in check, I guess.
This guy sounds like he sucks.
He does suck. He definitely sucks. I think one thing I'm kind of learning is that pretty much everyone agrees Jose sucked.
Okay.
And there's a little more discourse on how bad Kitty sucked. Like, maybe the worst thing about Kitty, besides this minor, like these incidents I'm talking about, is that she might have permitted this to go on.
Right.
Which I get. That is definitely a legitimate complaint. So, but people seem to like her more as personal relationships went.
But like, people in Jose's family attested to him being an asshole.
Yeah. And, some people might argue, oh, they did that to protect the boys. But I also was like, well, why would they really care that much to protect the boys too? Because the boys seem like little dicks too at this point.
Yeah.
Or like, kind of annoying kids. Like, and they grow up to be, rich dicks.
Right.
So I don't know that they had a huge incentive to protect them, but
it's wild that even after he was killed, people are like if he sounds like he must have been dickish. If after he's dead, people are like, yeah, he was a piece of shit.
Right. It's like usually the time people are kind of like, I'll let it go and just be kind. And there's like, not in this episode, but we'll get into more later about him. That's even worse.
Oh my God.
And like things with his funeral and stuff like that, where it was like, ugh. So it's crazy. So where was I? Oh yeah. So the boys attend the exclusive Princeton day school at this time. And the dad's like, you need to get into sports. Like, I come from a very successful championship sports family. He got them into soccer initially, but he really wanted them to become first-rate tennis players. Because Jose, people say he kind of was a little ashamed of his immigrant background and kind of wanted to be very Americanized. And he wanted his kids to play, like, not soccer.
You're playing the rich dick sport.
Yeah, he wanted them to play the rich dick sport, tennis, which he found to be, like, upper class. So Lyle was definitely kind of the golden child and the one that Jose primarily pinned all of his hopes and dreams on. And not surprisingly, Jose is the epitome of the crazy sports dad, like showing up to matches and games and being absolutely insane in front of all the other parents and kids and coaches and whatever. and just truly like embarrassing. They never felt like they could please their dad, and they were right. He was like difficult. At the age of 8 and 9, Jose had them drop any other activity other than tennis. And this became really the main focus of the family's life, like the boys' tennis careers. He even built a tennis court on their property. He had a clear vision for them. He wanted them to become tennis champions, then go to Ivy League schools, and then succeed in business like he did. He pushed the boys hard, and if the boys reacted back towards him, it was not good. One time, Lyle was playing a match with an injured ankle, and during the game, Jose began yelling out at him, "What a baby. Look, he can't run. Oh, poor baby, can't play tennis." Like, he's doing that during his son's game when he's struggling.
And no other parents are like, "Hey, asshole."
I think it was like, you know how it probably was back then. People just kept to themselves or were scared of him. Like,
right.
I didn't ever see anyone saying that someone stood up to him, but Lyle does stand up to him. At some point, he shouts, "Why don't you just shut up?" And Jose obviously turns red, grabs a tennis ball and threw it at him hard, and then ordered Lyle to get into the back of the waiting limousine that was driving them around. And inside, he took hold of Lyle by the neck, punched him in the face, and said, "Don't ever embarrass me like that again, or I'll kill you." Now, obviously, just as a reminder, these are stories coming from Lyle. Like, obviously, they're the only two there. It's not like the limo driver is saying this. So in 1980, Jose moves over to the entertainment world, working for RCA. And he loved being in this more glamorous job. He was meeting celebrities, but he definitely brought his cold business sense to the creative field. And we hate this, folks, don't we?
Yes.
This is like a David, what's his name, Zaslav?
Yeah.
Where these business guys come into creative films and just start cutting and managing as if we're talking about like car rentals or something and not art.
Right.
So he had that kind of mentality. There's a story I'm going to tell you now from Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics. He talks about this interaction he first had with Jose during his early days at RCA. He said that in 1985, they were finishing up their 4th album, Be Yourself Tonight. And quote, "I remember thinking, blimey, that's weird. What does he know about music?" A lot of people were like, "The Hertz guy, what's he doing at RCA?" Like, they didn't know what he was doing. And he shook my hand when I met him and I delivered the album. And he said, "Stewart, I love it. It's just like Ghostbusters."
What?
And Stewart was like, "What are you talking about?" And Menendez said he wanted to market the album as if it was a blockbuster film. And part of his plan was to put our picture on top of a Coca-Cola vending machine.
Come on.
So he's trying to like Top Gun it, like, or whatever, one of those blockbuster movies, get all the tie-ins as if the album is a blockbuster movie.
Right.
Which is crazy, especially with the Eurythmics. It's like,
that makes
that's
no
not even
sense.
They're not like that at all. Like, one of his biggest early deals was landing the Puerto Rican boy band Menudo. He like won a bidding war for this band. He really wanted to get into the Latin music world. Mm-hmm. This band was created and managed by the Latino Lou Pearlman, Edgardo Melendez. And I mean that in every sense of the word.
Do we have to do an episode?
We do. Menudo will get their own episode because I've read a lot of crazy shit. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I will at some point get into the Menendez connection, which there's a documentary on right now. That documentary goes into a lot more, though. So he did all the bad things. He steals money from these boys. He very famously had this rule that the boys were kicked out at the age of 16 or when their voice changed, sorry.
This is Edgardo?
Edgardo. And yes, he has been accused of sexually assaulting members of the band as well, in particular, one member. So, like I said, that's its own episode. But Jose became very invested in this band. Like I said, he won this huge bidding war. I think it was like $30 million to sign this band. And his marriage suffered because of this obsession. He basically said that the only reason he didn't leave Kitty at this point was because she ran the house and raised the boys the way he wanted. In 1986, Jose is passed over for the top job at RCA Records, and he's pissed So he decides to take a job in Los Angeles at IVE, International Video Entertainment, which will become known as Live Entertainment. And this is the home video division of Carolco Pictures, famous for the First Blood movies starring Sylvester Stallone. And so the family is off to Los Angeles. And this is very upsetting to them because they all love their life in Princeton, but that's what happens. And look, it's the beginning of the end. We'll take a break now. So the company that Jose goes to work for is in the red. And after just a year of running it, he completely turns it around with a profit margin of $8 million. And it pretty much doubles after that every year he's there. He, according to someone who worked with him, was the perfect corporate executive. He did what needed to be done with no heart. Like, he just had that cold fucking way of doing business. The family initially lived in Calabasas. To most people who knew them, they appeared to be a relatively close-knit family. They played tennis together. They ate dinners together. And this was not a couple who did the wealthy party circuit. Like, Jose did his work and then his family. Not necessarily like in a positive way, but that was all he cared about. So we've all watched enough Dateline to know, though, that things were not what they seemed. There's definitely a lot of issues now going underneath all this perfect image. Jose has been having a long-distance affair, or had been having a long-distance affair with a booking agent named Megan. That's obviously no longer long distance because he moves to LA. And she says that Jose's marriage was all but over, according to him, described him as being very sexually...
They always say that.
Yeah. I mean, nothing new here. She described him as being very sexually uptight, and she had to like loosen him up. But she said the biggest obstacle in their relationship wasn't his marriage, but it was the boys' tennis. Like, he would cancel their trysts to attend games. Like, that was always his number one priority. It's always tryst.
It's always a tryst.
It's always a tryst. She even gave her impressions of the boys in this book. She met them at some event that he did go to, and she described them as arrogant little snots in their tuxedos.
Oh.
You just know these guys were snotty.
The kids?
Yeah.
Well, look how he raised them.
I know. They were like put on this pedestal above their mom, basically.
Right.
So he eventually confesses to Megan that he had also been having another affair with an account executive for the last 8 years. So he has to tell her because after he moved to LA, Kitty found out about the other affair. And that's when Megan breaks it off with Jose. She's like, you don't cheat on me when I'm cheating with you.
Right.
It's the ultimate betrayal. But she does kind of say, well, it was actually, it became way more awkward as well when he was in LA. Cause I was like, I could run into Kitty on Rodeo Drive. Like, right. She's here now. It's like not the same. Now, obviously Kitty is despondent when she learns about this affair. And it really consumes her. She like even goes so far as to hire a private investigator to kind of find out who the woman is and like what her deal is.
Right.
It's like before the internet. She would have been like on her social media today, like that kind of stuff.
It would have been handled.
She also became like obsessive, calling Jose at work every 30 minutes, like always needing to know where he was. It definitely like triggered all her insecurities, as it does for many people. She begins going to therapy and is diagnosed with depression. She's also having a lot of suicidal ideation. She's self-medicating with alcohol and prescription drugs. But she refuses to divorce Jose despite her misery, just because she, like I said, she grew up thinking that's how your life gets ruined. You leave your husband and everything's done. She became more outwardly hateful towards him, though, because she was emboldened whenever she would drink. And the whole situation is it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because she actually is doing what she blamed her mom for doing, like calling the husband out on his bullshit, defending the kids. And obviously, it makes Jose angry. That's not what he signed up for. He wants a passive wife. Mm-hmm. So things get really tense in their marriage. Her closest friend, a woman named Karen Lamb, who used to be married to Dennis Wilson. Maybe we talked about her. Yeah.
Well, maybe we did talk about her.
I know. She had a lot to say about Kitty, who she met at an aerobics class.
Of course.
It is the late 80s. That's where you met all your friends.
It is.
She claims that Kitty actually did try suicide on 3 different occasions. She says it was kind of like I don't have specifics on what she did, but she said it is definitely like the call for help kind of suicide. But she was definitely suffering and struggling. I'm sorry, cry for help. Kitty also confided in Lamb not only about Jose's infidelity, but she talked about all the problems she was starting to have with her sons as well. Now, most of these involved Eric at this time because he's still home. And at this point, Lyle has moved to Princeton, but he didn't get into Princeton yet. He's at like a local community college trying to get into Princeton. So Eric starts getting into a lot of trouble. I don't know if he's at Calabasas High. There's like a group of boys who kind of bully him, and he starts becoming more smartass back to them. And one day they literally kick his ass, like badly. They break his nose, his face is beaten. And then the threats and bullying continue after that. And that really like traumatizes Eric. He's like unable to focus on school or tennis because he's so tense and upset about these threats. Lyle's in Princeton, as I mentioned, and he's basically just getting tickets in his Alfa Romeo. That's like his full-time job. He gets so many tickets. His license is suspended twice.
He's like illegally parking at Spago.
Yes, exactly. And then once he eventually does get into Princeton after a year of community college, he is immediately brought before the disciplinary committee for plagiarizing a paper.
Uh-oh.
So he agrees to voluntarily take a leave of absence for a year rather than be expelled.
Expelled.
Sorry.
It's expulsion.
Expulsion. I had expulsion written, but then I said the sentence differently. Expulsion. Yeah. So he was avoiding expulsion. So both Eric and Lyle comes back home at this point, and they start hanging out with other rich, privileged ne'er-do-wells.
Eric was in Princeton?
I'm sorry, Lyle comes home at this point.
Lyle was in Princeton.
So Eric's in high school still.
I apologize. He was getting tickets at some fancy New Jersey restaurant.
But I'm sure he was doing that in LA too. So, by the way, he's mad that he has an Alfa Romeo because he wanted a Porsche. So,
wow.
That's the kind of trauma they're dealing with.
I had a 92 Volvo.
I think an Alfa Romeo sounds cool.
I've never been into sports cars.
I haven't either, but I don't know.
That sounds like that's like a very expensive car.
Yeah, and it's fun to say. You're like ciao, like you're just
like that's the kind of car you drive around with a cup of espresso.
Yeah,
while you're driving it.
If I'm gonna have a sports car, I want like a little European one where you have like a little espresso maker in the console.
Right.
So obviously they're doing drugs. They're acting like little sociopaths. And Eric falls into a group of guys who began committing robberies, or what they call hot prowls. So they're doing like the bling ring kind of stuff.
Except these kids are like
they're
already
rich.
wealthy.
Yeah.
So this is like purely just for kicks.
Right. They're breaking into people's houses that they know, kind of.
In LA.
In Calabasas, Hidden Hills, like that area.
They're still in Calabasas.
Yeah. They're still in Calabasas. So they commit a lot of these, and they like steal a ton of stuff, like upwards of $100,000 worth of stuff. So they're getting some goods. And in September of 1988, Eric eventually confesses to 2 of these robberies and is arrested. He kind of has no choice to confess because someone turns him in the gang, but they don't officially know who. But it's probably one of the other kids got busted and is like, I'll turn them all in. Now, part of his plea bargain obviously includes financial restitution, which Jose basically writes a check for immediately because he's not going to ruin his kids' Ivy League dreams or his Ivy League dreams. Community service, probation. And another point of the plea bargain is that Eric must get a psychological evaluation. So this is where we're going to enter Dr. Jerome Oziel. Now, this guy will be a major part of this story, and this is where he comes into play. He's hired to do this psych eval, and he's kind of considered an unusual choice because he primarily focuses on sexual therapy and phobias, but he comes highly recommended, and this is the guy they bring in to do this for Eric, and he will become Eric's psychologist moving forward after the murders. Do you remember this whole part of the story?
No, I don't actually. I really don't.
It's crazy. It's basically, I'm just going to give a little synopsis because this is so juicy. His like mistress overhears Eric's therapy sessions.
What?
And when he dumps the mistress, that's when she turns him in for not turning Eric in when he confesses. So this guy is like so involved in this case even taking off. Like, it's crazy.
God.
So because of Eric's troubles in Calabasas, that's when Jose decides to move the family to Beverly Hills. They buy a Mediterranean-style house on Elm Drive. If you find articles about this case back in the day, many of them are called Nightmare on Elm Drive.
Stop it.
That's like, I saw it several times. I was like, yeah, you got to kind of go for it, I guess.
The headline writers were so excited.
No, they were living. So the home had formerly been rented by Elton John and Prince. This is a huge mansion in Beverly Hills. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting that I see a lot of shade, maybe we'll get into it more when people start testifying. They were offered to buy the home fully furnished, and they refused. It was like $100,000 or whatever.
$350,000.
$350,000, sorry. And
wait, the home cost $300,000?
No, the home was like $1 million or more. They were like, and we'll leave all the furniture for an additional $350,000. But they, of course, were like, no. And people like are super critical of the decor of this mansion.
So they like redid the decor.
And it's just like nothing. It's just shit. Like they had like 2 Chippendale imitation chairs. That was like their big purchase.
Right.
I mean, Kitty, I just don't think had the energy or know-how to decorate a big, huge mansion. But a lot of people, like neighbors, are very critical. So I definitely feel like we'll have to get into some of those bitchier like critiques. And some of them are super mean to Kitty too.
Oh my God.
Like one neighbor was like, she kind of wears sweatpants a lot. Like it's literally like she doesn't look like she brushed her hair.
This is pre-Beverly Hills athleisure, Desi.
Yeah. So she was...
Sweatpants were not acceptable.
No, she looked like those people in the depression commercials.
Right.
Which we've all been through.
We've all been
I think
there.
she was depressed and she was like dressing for comfort before leisure wear was like a big thing, right? So yeah, that stuff is crazy. Because of Eric's... But almost immediately after moving to Beverly Hills, Kitty is hospitalized for an accidental alcohol Xanax overdose. She's even busted in the hospital trying to take more Xanax without permission. And she has to be like monitored at that point. She actually signs herself out without, it's like unrecommended, and she does it anyway to go home. And she, according to the family, is really off the deep end when she returns. She threatens to poison the whole family. And according to the boys, this leads Jose and his sons to eat dinner out at a restaurant nightly to avoid being poisoned. And at some point, Lyle is convinced the marriage is causing her turmoil. I mean, duh. And he tells her that she'll always have her family if a divorce happens. He encourages her to return to Princeton, even saying he'll go with her. But obviously she does not do that. Kitty also reveals to her sister-in-law, Marta, that she wishes her sons were never born and seemingly blames them for destroying her relationship with Jose. She also takes to extreme dieting and gets a facelift in an attempt to repair things, which is a very classic move. Eric is still struggling in school at Beverly Hills High, but he does start to enjoy participating in the drama classes. He eventually gets diagnosed with dyslexia through the school, and they call Kitty to like discuss this with her. And they're shocked when Kitty's like, yeah, I know, we had him tested a while ago. And they're like, you could tell us so we can like make accommodations for his learning disability. But it was kind of like she didn't even give a shit to help him out with that. Eric also spends a lot of time with his close friend, Craig Signorelli. And Jose did not like Craig because Craig was back from the Calabasas days, and he believed that Craig was the one who was the snitch. So Craig tells a story that he showed up once to that Beverly Hills house, and Jose ran outside with a gun telling him not to ever come back and like running him off the property.
And this is like a 17-year-old kid?
Yes.
Jesus.
So Eric, he spent a lot of time with Craig, but they were also like writing partners. They had written 2 screenplays before they started their third, which was kind of their magnum opus. This screenplay was titled Friends, And the main character of it was Hamilton Cromwell. He's a rich kid who finds his parents' will, realizes he's in line to inherit $157 million. In the screenplay, it says when he realizes this, he smiles sadistically. And then the next scene in the script reads as so, a gloved hand is seen gripping the doorknob and turning it gently. The door opens, exposing the luxurious suite of Mr. and Mrs. Cromwell lying in bed. Their faces are of questioning horror as Hamilton closes the door behind him gently. Good evening, mother. Good evening, father. His voice is of attempted compassion, but the hatred overwhelms it. All lights extinguished, and the camera slides down the stairs as screams are heard behind. So after murdering his parents, he goes on to kill 3 other people, gets arrested. This is also a line a lot of people picked up on during the trial. Hamilton at some point says, sometimes he would tell me that I was not worthy to be his son. When he did, it would make me strive harder just so I could hear the words, I love you, son, and I never heard those words. Now, Hamilton does get... I think he gets convicted or killed at some point by his friend. That's what the title of the screenplay is. I'll have to double check that later. But after he is gone, there's a tape recorded message by him that plays, you must understand that the price a player pays for failure in the game of life is death. So this screenplay, you can see why people lost it.
Of course.
After the brothers were arrested for murder, because it's basically kind of like
this
a precursor.
Premeditated.
Yeah. Kitty actually helps type the script up for them, which is definitely sick. According to another family friend, that she also would laugh about it and pick it apart.
I'm sure Kitty didn't think. I'm sure Kitty was like, at least my son's using a creative outlet.
Right. They're kind of annoying and crazy, but they would never do this, right? Like, who would think that? So Lyle's back in Princeton now. He's kind of chilling, and he befriends a man named Donovan Goodyear, if I'm saying that right, who lived out of an old camper van, and he invites him to live in the dorm, which is obviously not like against the rules, but he kind of does whatever he wants. And Donovan had suffered through a lot, and Lyle really felt comfortable opening up to him about his pain and trauma after Donovan revealed that he had been molested as a kid. Donovan says that Lyle told him that his father had been sexually abusing both Eric and him since they were little. He said Eric was the most affected because he was younger, and that Jose would take baths with them. They were both scared because this new house they had purchased was having some renovations done, including a huge bathtub. And this made them really scared to be in the home. Now, although they eventually had a falling out, Donovan would later recall one of their last conversations. He said that at some point, Lyle revealed to him that Lyle's dad had an affair that really hurt his mom. She's becoming a basket case. And when Lyle said that he could kill his father for what he was doing, Donovan was like, I didn't really think anything of it. Like,
right.
People say that kind of stuff all the time, just like when they're angry. And 6 weeks before she died, Kitty also told her psychiatrist that she was hiding sick and embarrassing secrets about her family, and that she was also concerned her sons might be sociopaths. So according to Eric in the documentary I watched called Eric Tells All or whatever, in June of 1989, he graduates from Beverly Hills High with plans...
1989?
Yeah, 1989.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. 1989, he graduates from Beverly Hills High with plans to go to UCLA in the fall. Lyle returns from Princeton to go to the graduation and stay at home for the summer. And Eric says he's basically counting the days to finally escape his abusive dad and his mom. He explains that the first sort of thread pull in his unraveling that leads to the murders happens about a week before graduation, when his dad tells him he will not be living full-time at the dorms, but would be spending about half the week at home so Jose could monitor his studies. This was crushing information for Eric because he had been fantasizing for so long about how his life would go outside of the house. He said he felt defeated, dead inside, and had thoughts of suicide. That summer was just packed with fights, cold silences. It was a bad scene in the Menendez home. Perhaps one of the biggest fights occurs between Lyle and Kitty, and Eric walks into this just randomly coming home, and they're in the middle of this huge fight. As he walks in, his mother rips the hair off the top of Lyle's head. It was a toupee. So
the mom ripped
Lyle's toupee off.
Lyle's wearing a toupee?
Yes. I'll get to more of this in a second. This is like almost like being scalped, because this is a hairpiece that's like, your head is shaved, it's glued on with a high strength glue. And when you want to remove it, you actually have to get a special solvent to get it off. So when she tore it off, it was like his skin was ripping off as well.
Oh my God.
And he was obviously in intense pain, crying, and she's raging. She's like, that was $1,500. He was worried she'd take it away permanently, but she threw it at him. She's like, you don't even need your fucking hairpiece. Like, she's like having it. Like, she's pissed for whatever reason. Okay. So Jose had made Lyle start wearing a toupee in high school because his hair began to thin. And Jose believed in order to be successful, he needed a full head of hair.
Okay, Desi, that is crazy.
I know.
Are you fucking kidding? First of all, the toupee technology in the 80s was like a lot worse than it is now.
It's also crazy because when you look at him now, you're like, oh yeah. But you would never think, like, whatever, he's 21 when the murders happened, that a guy that young would have been wearing a toupee since high school.
Wait, when you look at him now,
looking back, you're like, oh yeah, that's a toupee.
Right.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Because I probably wouldn't have even thought of it.
That is crazy.
Also, your dad making you do it is so extra humiliating, because it makes you actually, like, instead of being like, it's okay, like, that happens, it's like making him know, yeah, that's fucking gross.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
You're young kids, they shouldn't have to wear a toupee.
Right, you're a loser.
Or they shouldn't,
like not the way to go. Now, the other thing that made this moment super humiliating to Lyle was Eric had no idea his brother wore a toupee. So Eric was finding out for the first time that this was even happening.
Why is this so haunting to me?
Because it's fucking sad that you would do that to your kid, even though these guys might be dicks. It's just kind of like...
It's sick.
It's sick. So after this fight, him and Eric go back to the pool house and they have a conversation about the fight, what happened. And Eric brings up something Lyle had asked him when he was a kid. Lyle at some point asked him, is something happening between you and Dad? Eric then revealed to Lyle that it was still happening, to which Lyle responded, well, it's never happening again. Now, he also kind of berates Eric, like, why are you letting this happen still? Like, why aren't you stopping it? Mm-hmm. Which is obviously wrong. But, you know, whatever. They're both kids, I guess, but still. So Thursday, August 17th, 1989, this is 3 days before the murder, Lyle confronts the dad about still abusing Eric. Now, obviously, this turns into a massive blowout fight. Jose is like, stay out of it. Jose yells at Eric for telling Lyle. Now, I want to say again, there's no outside witnesses to what happened the last week before the murders happened. So this is all testimony from Lyle and Eric. At some point, Kitty, who appears drunk, enters the ring, and she's like, I've always known what's happening. Like they're like, do you know what's happening? And she's like, I've always known. And this obviously devastates Eric because that means she's letting it happen. Eric says at this point he believed his parents were going to kill them to save their reputation. 2 days before the murder, Eric and Lyle go to San Diego to buy guns. They say for protection. They use Donovan Goodrow's license, which Lyle had stolen back in Princeton.
Whoa.
So I think he claims that it was because his license was suspended. That's back in the day where you could just use a license.
A driver's license.
A driver's license, and no one really checked if it was really you. But they try to buy them, I think, in Santa Monica, but there was like a 2-week waiting period. So they drive down to San Diego and they're able to use them, buy them down there with this fake ID or whatever. Not fake ID, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then they come back home and they go to like the valley somewhere to buy the ammunition and all that. A day before the murders, the whole family drive down to Marina del Rey to go shark fishing. This was a pre-planned trip. So they're all like in misery all summer long, but they're going to go on this shark fishing endeavor together as a family.
I'm not getting on a boat with this family.
No, the boys and the parents basically stay separate the whole time. The parents are like inside the room. The boys are like on the front part of the boat, that area where you can like sit. And they basically stay there the whole time. In the documentary, the Eric Tells All documentary, they interview the captain of this fishing boat. I don't know why this made me think so much of Melrose Place, this whole thing.
It's a very Melrose Place.
I know. So he's like the vibes were off.
Yeah.
Like this family was like he was like, it was like the tension was so thick. The whole trip was very weird.
Did they catch any sharks?
They did catch 2 brown sharks, but like at the end, the whole time, the whole boat ride, no one did anything or even were together. He said that at some point they like hit a wave and water splashed up on the boys who were sitting up front, and they just stayed there soaking wet and didn't even try to like warm up or change clothes or dry off.
Right.
That's like, which is kind of creepy, but maybe lends credence to the fact that they were like scared or at the very least trying to avoid their parents because they knew they were going to kill them, right? Like it could be both ways. So that night when they get home from the fishing trip, Eric locks himself in his room. Jose starts pounding on the door, and Eric has his shotgun and is screaming at the dad. He'll never let him do it again. Jose eventually leaves and stops pounding, and Eric says he's more convinced than ever that Jose will not risk being exposed as a child rapist, and he was as good as dead. So August 20th, the day of the murders, the boys decide to leave the house and stay together. Apparently, according to them, it's like a protective move. They think, oh, if we're together, they can't murder us, which I don't think is true, but whatever. They go to some church in Santa Monica. Like this is their version of the day. At some point, they come home later in the evening around 9:30 to get a few things with plans to go back out. And Kitty and Jose, according to them, refuse to let them leave. Jose tells Eric to go up to his room, which I guess is like triggering to Eric because that's what he would say when he was going to do things with him. And Lyle screams, "You're not going to touch Eric anymore." And Eric's sort of walking up the stairs. And at some point, Lyle says to him, "It's happening now." And Eric was terrified, according to him. The parents go into the family room and close the door. And the brothers claim that that's where they thought that the parents were going to kill them. This whole thing doesn't make 100% sense to me, like what they thought was going to happen. But at that point, they go get their guns, and they basically go back to the main house, and they burst through the family room doors. Eric enters first and begins firing. Lyle is right behind him. Jose apparently jumps up and shouts, "No, no, no." A shot blows him away in his left thigh. He falls back onto the couch. They're basically just indiscriminately firing. Glass and wood are breaking. Kitty tries to run to the kitchen and she gets shot. She's like on the ground. Lyle has to reload at some point. And he reloads and then he basically goes right up to his mom's head and shoots her right in the cheek. So that's like obviously a horrible blow. And then it was over. So this crime scene is like crazy because both of them, between the two of them, they're shot 16 times.
Yeah.
Kitty has the most shots because I think she was walking away. But you could tell these guys like did not know how to shoot because they're just all over random shots in like the calf. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like there's very few, like there's like 2 contact wounds, but after the fact that they had shot them a bunch in places that necessarily aren't fatal. According to the boys, after they do this, they commit these murders, they just kind of sit down on the stairs waiting for the cops to come, thinking that someone's going to report the gunshots. But no one arrives, and they obviously more panic starts setting in, and they scramble to come up with an alibi. So first they do is they pick up all the empty shotgun shells in the family room, decide to go out and try and buy movie tickets as an alibi. Now, this is like one of the stupidest attempts at an alibi I've ever heard. Because why not buy the tickets in advance and then go do the murders? Not that I'm giving people tips, but like it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. They
They go to the movies and they're like, oh, we'll buy an old time ticket for a movie we've already seen.
Can you do that?
No. They try to buy like an 8:30 showing of License to Kill, like a James Bond movie. I think that's the one. And they're like, oh, that one, you can't buy an old ticket. So then they're like, oh, let's do Batman, because they have also already seen that. And then
what does that matter?
Because they want to have a movie they've seen.
Oh, so they can say what happened.
Say what happened. Yeah. And then they end up, they're like, well, let's just buy a ticket for Batman now. Maybe the time won't be on the receipt. But of course, it is on the receipt because that's how movie tickets work. So that's a fail. It's so stupid. But it does lend credence to like the fact that this wasn't really planned at all, pretty much.
Clearly.
Yeah. So they then are like, well, we also got to get rid of these guns. So they take a drive up to Mulholland. They agree in the car not to tell the police about what their dad did with Eric in order to protect the family image. They get to Mulholland and kind of dump them just down like a steep cliff off of Mulholland. And it's at that point, Lyle's like, oh shit, we were supposed to meet my friend Perry Berman at the Taste of LA Food Festival.
Stop it.
Yes.
Desi, stop it.
Taste of LA Food Festival.
Wait. Is Larry, what's his name? Harry?
Perry.
So is Perry just like waiting there like on his big did they even have the chonky cell phones? Yeah, he's on his chonky cell phone. He's like, hello, I'm waiting here with the gelato.
He has like a little spoon.
Yeah.
And like a little scoop of gelato.
Right.
So, of course, they show up to the Taste of LA Food Festival like minutes before it's shutting down. Perry's left already. He like waited around and just bailed at some point.
Poor Perry.
So they call him somehow. I don't know if it's payphone, chunky cell phone. And they're like, meet us at the Cheesecake Factory.
Wait.
Yes.
They had Cheesecake Factory in 1989.
And I did a little research because I was like, Cheesecake Factory? Well, the Cheesecake Factory was initially literally a cheesecake store in LA that had like 2 locations. Then they started selling like little sandwiches and salads. I was laughing because in the book, it was like they went up to a 1-page menu. I was like, well, now they have a 50-page menu.
That is, Desi, I am shaking right now. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because
it's been around since 1978.
That is an extreme escalation. How do you go from like selling just cheesecake and like maybe a sandwich to selling avocado egg rolls, buffalo ranch sliders, Cajun pasta, Asian spring rolls? Like, I mean, that's like the tip of the iceberg.
I was trying to find like an old menu and I just didn't have enough time because maybe it does exist. But
I'm
going to
find that today.
But it was like, I was like so blown away. I had to take time out. You know how that happens during research. You're like, wait a minute, it's always food related.
That's why this episode's late.
Yes.
Just admit it.
So I was like, I had to find it. And there's like a whole Wikipedia page on Cheesecake Factory because it was like 2 stores in 1978. And then it just kept slowly expanding. And then it burst. Like in the 90s, it went off the rails. It probably got bought by a company. I didn't.
Wait a minute. So this started in LA?
Yes. And the first big restaurant that started selling like Asian pasta, like spring roll pasta, avocado dumplings, like whatever, was in Marina del Rey.
Wow. And is that location still there?
I honestly don't know, but I know where it would be if it is still there.
Yeah.
You know that street
Yes.
where everything is, like the movie theater?
Yeah.
It probably is right there if it was somewhere. Anyway, so that was pretty crazy information.
So they met, I'm sorry, did they meet Perry?
No. They called to meet him.
At Cheesecake.
At Cheesecake
and
Factory.
Perry's like, I'm full.
Yeah.
I just ate gelato. I ate a crazy salad.
I've had 100 bites of food.
I'm full.
Well, he does agree to meet them there. But when he shows up, they're vacuuming, and the brothers are nowhere to be seen because while they were driving to Cheesecake Factory, they began panicking.
Perry must have been so excited to testify against these guys. These guys stood me up at the LA Food Festival, and then they stood me up at Cheesecake Factory.
Also, do you know how haunting it must be to be at a food festival by yourself, just pounding little bites by yourself?
I would be devastated, mortified. Yes, I would still eat things.
But it would be so embarrassing.
But I would be like, everyone's watching me alone, standing around, eating this panini.
And you have to be like, can I have one? Like when they come by you or you pass a booth, you have to wait on, like, it was like, so, I don't know.
You have to
I don't
go
want
with
to deal
a
with
partner.
it. Absolutely. It just looks sadder by yourself for me. Maybe other people have the confidence to do it.
There's nothing wrong with that, but I need a partner in pig when I go.
I wouldn't judge anyone.
No, I wouldn't. It's society.
But it's also fun. I think it's more fun with someone too. But still, yeah. So they're panicking. Perry's, that's the worst feeling, walking into a restaurant and seeing them vacuuming and putting the chairs up. So he didn't get his tequila chicken pasta that night. So they go back to Elm Drive and they decide to call 911. So Lyle calls 911. This is a very famous call. You can find it online. We hear it a lot in the trial.
It's parodied in the Cable Guy.
Yes. He tells the dispatcher that his parents had been shot. He's saying they shot and killed my parents. I don't know. I didn't hear anything. I just came home. Eric can be heard screaming in the background. At some point, Lyle's like, Eric, shut up. Get away from them. Because he's in the room with the parents. Now, a neighbor reports, like, at some point, the boys do come outside when the police arrive, and a neighbor reports hearing them scream and then seeing them curled up in a ball on the lawn in front of the house, just like screaming in grief. A Beverly Hills police chief at the time, he says, I have heard of very few murders that were more savage. Another retired police detective who was hired by the family to investigate at some point, he says that it was like one of the most graphic scenes he had ever seen. Quote, I've seen a lot of homicides, but nothing quite that brutal. Blood, flesh, skulls. It would be hard to describe, especially Jose, as resembling a human that you would recognize. That's how bad it was. According to the autopsy report, one blast caused explosive decapitation with evisceration of the brain and deformity of the face to Jose Menendez. The first round of shots struck Kitty in her chest, right arm, left hip, left leg. And then, as I mentioned, the murderers reloaded and fired into her face, causing multiple lacerations of the brain, and her face was basically unrecognizable.
I mean, this was a shotgun.
Yeah, this was a shotgun with buckshot. So that's the one that kind of explodes out, I think.
Yeah, like a shotgun wound
that's not
crazy.
Yeah, that like destroys whatever it shot, especially at close range.
Yeah.
Like that. By the way, in the autopsy, this is like everyone's nightmare. They describe Kitty as well-nourished.
Oh.
I was just like, why do you need that description?
Look, I understand when they have to like look at the stomach contents for like time of death or locate like where they were and stuff. But did they have to?
Like, honestly, saying it that way is just worse than saying
well-nourished.
Well-nourished, yes. It was crazy. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's just fucking rude. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
What is that even? Why do you have to use
Well, it was like you're trying to be polite, but it's like ruder in a way. I don't know.
Like, they couldn't just say like she had eaten dinner.
I think it was more about her weight.
Oh, they were talking about
about her weight.
I thought you were saying they were talking about the stomach contents.
No. They were describing her weight. That is just so
Why does her
up.
weight have to do with anything?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't get it. Or just put her weight and height. Like, why you don't need to comment? You don't need to comment on it.
That's like an opinion.
Yes. It's so crazy.
That sounds like it's out of like a 1920s autopsy.
Oh, it was like that's what's so crazy about even like a case from the 1989 still has those kind of like evil like assertions that are unnecessary.
These like,
especially about women, like
these like derogatory comments.
Yes. So the brothers basically get kind of loosely searched by the cops, and then they're free to kind of roam around in front of the house while this initial investigation or crime scene kind of like, stuff is happening. One of the detectives sees Eric ramming his head into a tree several times, and Lyle kind of like restraining his brother. In shock, Eric begins shouting out things like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to torture them. Who would do this? We're going to get those guys. And the detective's like, who are you going to get? Thinking like Eric kind of knows who the killers are. This is when sort of what becomes the initial prevalent theory in the days following the murders sort of starts. that it was a mob hit. So Eric Menendez goes as far as to point the finger at Noel Bloom, who is a porn film distributor and a former associate of the Bonanno crime family. He's like, Bloom and his father had despised each other after a business deal turned sour. And in fact, the morning after the murders, when the news starts getting out, a lot of people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon and the fact that Jose is so hated. So a common joke, I think some Hollywood insider jokes that, well, there's hundreds of people going over their alibis right now. If all the people Jose Menendez had crossed in his business dealings were gathered together, police would need to rent out the Hollywood Bowl to interview them all. So he had even apparently gotten into a fight with Sylvester Stallone over the budget of one of the Rambo movies. So Jose was like, he'll go down. He'd even go after Sylvester Stallone, which had to be scary, right?
Was Sylvester Stallone ever a
suspect?
I mean, as we know from our investigation into the gerbil, Richard Gere and the gerbil, the worst Sylvester Stallone will do is start a decades-long rumor that you like to put gerbils in your ass.
Right. So I think Sylvester's revenge is a dish best served cold type of guy.
Yeah.
He's not going to murder. He's going to start an evil maybe he started the rumors about Jose and Menudo. Who knows? So yeah, this guy had like a lot of enemies, which doesn't always happen in a murder, right? It's usually like, who would ever do this?
Right.
So a lot of people are like, this stinks of organized crime. Someone's definitely sending a message.
Does it though, with the way the shots are fired?
Well, I mean, that's what starts people are like, well, actually, mob people or whatever, mob hits won't pick up the bullet shells. They're about getting the fuck out of there. And it would also be a clean shot to the head. This isn't like someone shooting, like, do you know what I mean? Maybe they'd torture them, but they wouldn't shoot them at like just offhandedly all over the place like that.
You'd want to hire a professional.
Yeah. So neighbors also obviously began coming out of their homes since this is a very unusual scene in Beverly Hills. One neighbor is even overheard saying to an investigator or a police officer kind of blocking things off, please tell me he was a drug dealer, meaning Jose, and that's why this happened to him, so that she could be safe. Like,
right, like it was
his fault.
Yeah.
Right. She's like, it was a lot of things like that don't happen here. Now, typically at that point, there were 2 murders per year in Beverly Hills. So this was already like the 2 murders. They were already like, whoa, like what's happening? The boys are taken to the police station. They kind of like whisper to each other in the car ride over or in the car while they're waiting that they're going to stick to this story, the alibi, this movie, fucking like food festival, whatever. And it kind of works. Like, I think Lyle's concerned Eric's going to like fucking confess. Right. So he's basically like, don't do it. At 5:30, they go back home in a taxi. They're expressing fears now that the mob might be after them as well. And they tell investigators they want to go to a hotel, so they need to get some personal items like clothes and their sports equipment, tennis rackets, etc.
Why do they need that?
Well, a lot of people want to know. They're told to come back in a few hours, and then they do that. But this was all kind of a diversion. What they really wanted was to get inside Eric's Ford Focus, because they had left unused shotgun shells and the receipts from the San Diego and Van Nuys stores that they had purchased the guns and ammunition in. And the cops are like letting them kind of walk around. They go to this car and put those items in the tennis bag and leave, and no one notices that they do this. They're also not tested for gunshot residue.
Dude, they must be covered in it.
I know. So the interesting aspect of that is that investigators will later say that the boys had been suspects from the start, but it will be 7 months before they're arrested for the murder of their parents.
Is that so?
Yes, 7 months. So it's like, were they really suspects from the start? Because why weren't they tested for gunshot? Why were they allowed to just have free reign around the house?
That's like a crime scene.
Also, their interviews were like a few hours maybe at most, and that includes like the travel time to the police station. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're going to leave off.
Wow.
There's a lot more to get to because these 7 months are full of shit. It's like before the trials even happen, there's so much to get into. which is why I'm upping it to 3 episodes probably.
Great.
So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed that and learned something. I'm trying to find new information, so it's not boring.
It's not. I've like know this case. It's been a long time since I like listened to or read about the case. Like, so a lot of the information appears new to me because it's been so long.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So unless you're like a super Menendez head,
right, this might not be for you.
But what other documentary is going to go into a history of the Cheesecake Factory?
We're always going to give you something like that for sure.
That's the difference. That's the Hollywood crime scene promise.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be more weird 90s restaurants coming through or foods. We don't know. They do go on a spending spree. That could be fun. Where they go and what they get. That's going to be real 90s probably.
That's a fun aspect of this horrible story. All right. We'll be back soon.
Bye.